cybercriminals are working overtime. Last year in the fourth quarter alone, phishing attacks disguised as COVID testing information increased by 521%. Barracuda has identified 13 types of email threats and how cybercriminals use them to steal money from your company or personal information from your employees and customers. Find out about the 13 email threat types and how Barracuda can provide complete email protection for your teams, your customers, and your reputation. Get your free ebook at securityweekly.com/Barracuda. That's securityweekly.com/Barracuda. Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. Join us on March 10th for our next Security Weekly Unlocked webcast. For an introduction to KQL queries, visit securityweekly.com/webcasts to find out about the lineup that we've got coming up. A lot of good ones in the works. Again, we just ask for name and email address, and you get essentially some free training. You can find the archive at securityweekly.com/on-demand. We would like to welcome Alissa Torres, Senior Threat Hunter at Palo Alto Networks. Alissa is passionate about security operations and empowering analysts to succeed in blue team ops. Her professional experience includes roles in forensic investigations, enterprise incident response, and threat hunting, security services, consulting, and management. Alissa, welcome to Paul's Security Weekly.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, nice to have you. Alissa, you've been on the show before. It was like ages ago, and I don't even remember the year or the number. I probably should have had that ready, but this is your second appearance on the show.
It is. Dude, we stomped it last time. I'm looking to do the same thing tonight. Yeah, we were pulling PCAP out of memory images. That was a good time.
Oh, yes. Outstanding. Outstanding. Alissa, I may have asked you this like way back when, but I want to ask you again. How did you get your start in information security?
Oh, I was all kinds of IT. I had my paper MCSE when I got out of the Marine Corps, but I worked with some former digital forensic examiners, like former law enforcement, who had worked in the forensic space. And one of them lent me his Brian Carrier, shout out to Brian Carrier, a file system forensic analysis book. And I got my NK certification, ENCE. So I got my start doing employee investigations. It's like I'm a narc or something, but I don't work in that space anymore.
Gotcha.
Not at all.
Now, I also want to ask you, because I know you're teaching now for Black Hills. Your class runs, I'm going to say underneath John Strand, right? John and I have been friends like forever.
Then you can say that. Yeah.
So like, how did you meet John? Like, do you have a funny story when you met John? Like, how did you kind of get to know John?
Oh man, John was the one that did my mock interview. Oh my gosh. And that's like one of our topics tonight.
Yeah.
But he did my murder board for, what is this? A bit of gatekeeping for one of the institutions that I taught for. And he was super nice. A lot of people wouldn't say that, but
after a murder board, you called one of the people. So just a little background, right? A murder board, when you were escalating the levels in particular organizations, right? You would go up against a murder board. It would be other instructors that you would have to present something. So Alissa, you were presenting something, and the other instructors kind of played like students and asked you really hard questions, and their goal was to really grill you in that process, which is why they called it a murder board.
And to provide a really bad instructor experience so that you would be, so they would see how you handle difficult students.
Right. It's kind of like boot camp, right? They put you through hell so you can deal with the, having been, thank you for your service, Alissa, right? You're familiar with that experience.
Yeah, he was a more friendly than a drill instructor, but I think it was because I was on the phone. I said, "Hey, I'd write this on the board. Like, He asked some super hard question, and I'm like, "Oh, let me capture that." Whoa! But I think he was trying to, push someone until they admit they don't know or something like this.
Yeah. That's what they do.
I don't know. Yeah.
But he was nice about it.
Yeah, he was. It was a good day.
Yep. John did my murder board too, and he accused me of name dropping Dan Kaminsky. But the problem that he said, I'd love to call you on name dropping Dan Kaminsky, but I knew you know the guy, and I knew you hung out with him because I was there with you too.
Right.
So,
that doesn't count.
No.
Yeah, you can go ahead and use his name then.
Yeah.
So I kind of disclosed to our audience, right, that you're teaching classes now under in John's world, that's the anti-siphon umbrella, right? But it all gets kind of rolled up into Wild West Hackin' Fest and Black Hills Information Security. So what are you teaching?
Oh, I teach endpoint investigations, and it has, you always want to put the word advanced in front of it, just in case, just in case someone's like, this is hard. Well, it's advanced. You can always point back to that.
Sure.
As I told you, I warned you, but we have a good time. And of course, memory forensics is included. We don't pull PCAP, but we have some pretty cool stuff going on.
Nice. So, and is that a 1 day, a 2 day, or?
It is all in how you seek to take it. In person, it's 2 days.
Okay.
We run it online, 4 hours for 4 days.
Yep.
Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Yeah. Awesome.
That class runs about like once a quarter, maybe twice a quarter. But the next in live session is going to be in San Diego, and I cannot wait.
Oh, that's exciting. I love San Diego. If I were to go back to California, that would be the one place that I would want to go to, is San Diego.
Yeah,
it's great.
I don't even think that's part of California, is it? That's more
I agree, Tyler. Right? Like it's a different beast. Different beast for sure.
Paradise.
Now wait, Alissa, you also have to tell us like how did you end up at Palo Alto doing like really cool stuff?
Dude, just luck, man. Luck, I tell you. Right now, well, I will tell you that I knew that I wanted to be a threat hunter because I had done a little bit of staff augmentation as a threat hunter for a particular company. And I found it to be the most peaceful, centering application of my skill set. And I've been working on the skill set for a while. So
now wait, you find threat hunting peaceful. That's really... I've not heard it described like that before, Alissa.
There's a little bit of zen, like pulling upon different artifacts and pulling a storyline together. It's cool. So many folks that are not working in enterprise would love to have enterprise data. Right now I have like 9 enterprises in front of me. And it's just like, if I have a question about what normal looks like, I can gen it up. And this has been, I've been
you basically help like 9 enterprises do threat hunting and kind of work very closely with them.
Yes.
That's really cool.
It's a good gig.
Yeah. And certainly there's a lot of stuff to find, for sure.
Yes. My colleague says that KMS licensed hack tools are not evil. I don't know. They are, in essence, an incredible exemplar of where malware is headed today. It's like all kinds of hooking, just really quite sophisticated if you want to get around activating your license.
Yeah. No, but I mean, you kind of established you cut your chops in like deep digital, because like when we say forensics, even digital forensics, it can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. And I think when you are threat hunting or doing incident response, in essence, you're doing some level of forensics. And my question, Alissa, is when do we, like, where's the line between incident response and threat hunting and like full-blown digital forensics? And the second part of that question is how do we know when to pivot from one to the other?
Ooh, well, I was raised upright when I worked at Mandiant. They ambiguous. They taught me that there are definitely 2 service lines. You never want to say you're doing forensics when it's just incident response. It's so weighted. So I say we apply forensic skills, forensic knowledge in pursuit of hunting evil.
No, that's fair.
And that's fair. Splits. That walks the line. There you go. But I get your point. I get your question. It's like when to actually come off of that massive amount of data that's available to you based on XDR or like this aggregating into the SIM and go and get more answers from the host. It's going to depend, right?
Yeah, of course.
I gotta say, when you describe this, Alissa, you light up. You're having a freaking ball, aren't you? You are really enjoying this.
It's a good time. It really is. Lee, come back to us. Rejoin the workforce. I have a role for you right here. Now, you wouldn't have to work out of my home office, but yeah. Be virtual buddies.
Lee gets a job offer right on the show. It's amazing.
I know. It's so wrong. It's so wrong.
I'm not sure if it's a job offer or an invitation back to the cult. Yeah. I mean, like
why not both?
Right.
Is there a difference?
Not really.
Yeah.
That's
that was
terrifying
awesome.
and true.
I mean, I can remember. So when I worked at university, right, and we talk about incident response, like there were times where we didn't quite have the tools that we have today, and I had to go physically visit the workstation in order to like look at it to say, is it hacked and how it's hacked? Again, to your point, that's applying some forensic skills in an incident response process, right? I remember vividly, sometimes I had to put on like these plastic little booties over my shoes and to like enter the certain area of the university where the computer was and stuff like that. So like great memories. But what I was doing was more applying forensic skills, looking at the processes, maybe looking at the registry, lightly looking at the file system. But when you say forensics, I'm like, you're tearing apart the file system, you're taking a snapshot of memory, and there's a distinct difference there.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. But I, too, have worked investigations where I had to go into someone's office at night, take a picture of how things looked, and then I had to image the hard drive. So in doing so, I had to touch that like inch of dust, a dead skin and everything when I had to dismantle the desktop machine, pull the hard drive. It was nasty. How do you replace that? You just can't. Yeah. So they probably thought the cleaning crew had come in. That was the best that I could do.
Yeah, you got to clean everything now.
But you, right? I mean, you bring up a good point. Like, is forensics in this sense tied to like a law enforcement investigation? But that's really just one path.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to be employing more of the covert techniques when you don't want to alter the target's behavior. If you're hunting a rogue employee, or if you're trying to piece together what a threat actor did, right? So you're trying to be as covert as possible so as not to interject or inject changes into the environment. That's good.
Right.
Now I've sold it.
I mean, some of investigation that's more important than others, obviously. Security, and I don't know, maybe today in an enterprise what that looks like, but 20 years ago, you were the employee is, looking at pornography or doing something to steal secrets or violating a law, or like, are they hacked? That was like, they all called the same person, right? They call a security person to come help us in most organizations 20 years ago with that. I feel like now we've maybe matured a little in being more selective and having different resources available depending on which type of investigation you're conducting.
That's a good point. Yeah, I know the privacy team gets involved in certain cases, and anytime that you're targeting, anytime you're investigating an employee, it's got to be from HR and legal.
Right. Yeah.
But if I target a system because of suspicious activity, typically they're not involved until it comes to a particular entity behind the activity. So, yeah.
So when you do this in an organization, make sure you're working with HR, legal, and your management team, right? Make sure you get the appropriate levels of permission for the investigation. We talk about this in a pen testing when you're doing internal pen testing, but this transfers I think the very same thing into forensics. Exactly.
I would agree with that. And I think incident response is much like that too. We have shadow investigators, shadow forensics teams. Sometimes managers will call out the incident response team to just pull back that particular employee's browsing history, and it's an absolute no-go. I know that's part of the charter of an incident response team or security operations team, exactly what they're held responsible for, and then there's a team that does employee investigations. So it's important not to get the waters muddied. For legal reasons, wrongful termination lawsuits are quite common.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice.
How has some of the way in which you investigate changed? You've got threat actors, you've got attribution that's probably not going to happen, hopefully, but you end up with things like the cloud, and you end up with SaaS applications and single sign-on. What are some of the cool new techniques and process changes you've had to adapt to, and how do some of these technologies also inhibit those, the ability for you to do what you do well?
Oh my goodness. It is super complex. Every day is I have all of this Windows internals knowledge. I've sat at the foot of masters, and I've learned, and I have my Windows internals books on the bookshelf over there. But I'll tell you, it does not arm you for the level of, bubbling up. I guess you're just having to dig into the cruft, and really it's quite difficult to discern what normal looks like. I was analyzing some syncing that was occurring between Azure Active Directory and on-prem. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's creating a new user account for this purpose to sync and pull down or push a copy of the Active Directory. This has got to be bad. It's creating an entire new database. This has got to be bad. There's got to be a rogue machine, a rogue process. And upon further investigation, that all was legit. What wasn't legit was the rogue connections to the FTP server pushing out massive amounts of data. So I think some of the rules apply, the rules of the road, unauthorized access coming from unknown remote IP addresses. Thank goodness that's still alive and well, as being applicable. But I tell you, the waters are muddied for investigations where you're going in as a third-party service offering and trying to make sense of what normal looks like. And to be fair, it's so complex that a lot of the in-house folks are like, I don't know, I don't know. Take a look at the SIM data and try to ascertain a baseline. So I guess pointing back to historical data to help you out as to whether a process is normal or not, but then adversary might have been in that long too, and so it continues.
And having to interact with a lot of those applications and companies and SaaS, that also has changed how you have to go about working with legal and HR and figuring out what platform has which APIs and what data they save and what we actually save in a SIM. All those things kind of have to come into play. Does any of that tend to lend itself to finding things that maybe you weren't looking for, especially on those platforms that may end up as a bug bounty or GDPR violation, things like that?
I like this idea, and I didn't think of it. I totally could have put this up as a bug bounty, but I like to pull command line. Everyone who works in the space is probably like, if I could have one thing on this desert island, it would be command line of all running processes on all of my machines in my enterprise. Maybe not, but that's me. So I was pulling through a bunch of command line, and I ran into a process that had username and pass in clear text. It was an internal application, web app, where folks were making a connection by running a particular process, and their creds were actually in the command line. We hunted down the developers, and they said, oh, that's the way it goes across the wire, and that's the way it's handled by the application and the way it's stored in the database. Do you have a suggestion for an encryption method we could use? And I was like, dude, I just got promoted. Boom. I was like, I get to decide now. I am being asked for what encryption type to use. I did not give them that advice, but I thought it was fascinating. That in fact we just stumbled into plain text credentials and command line.
Yeah,
some people say it's cyber hygiene related, but it can be devastating.
Sorry, that's the thing about threat hunting, though, that I think is both interesting but also challenging, is that sometimes when you're doing a hunt, you're like, could the attackers really be that stupid? And you're like, oh my God, they are. And then the complete flip side of that is, could the attackers really be that smart? Oh, crap, maybe they are. And that's what I think really is one of the things that keeps us going, right? Is that varying levels of skill in going like, yeah, I can find the easy stuff, but am I missing the really advanced techniques?
It's insane. I think I probably am twice as slow as other 10 years to my junior folks who are on my team, because I've seen such evil things.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, really, that's not an SBC host, or that's not a legit service. Oh my gosh, we need to take a look at closer at this. And they're like, everything checks out, being done.
Yes. But that's a double-edged sword, though. It's a great point, Alissa, is that, those of us that have been doing it 20 plus years, we're like, everything's evil, because I've seen so much evil and so much malicious intent and so many different things that like, that has to be evil. And we can make the mistake of going down a path and going, I swear this is evil, and spending way too much time going, oh, no, that was just a misconfigured service, or developers just didn't implement the protocol correctly, or whatever the case may be, right?
You know what? Never a waste of time, because
no, true. Always a learning experience.
Edification for me. Yes. And I'm like, whoa, that's the way the world is these days. 10 hours later. But hopefully it's knowledge I'll be able to apply again. I'm bound and determined to find evil. Ever since I was scrolled away in a cubicle at Mandiant, and I spotted an sbchost.exe running from a downloads folder, and I was like, dude, this is it. Name and lights. This is going to be me. People are going to be talking about me in hush whispers. Finally, I found evil in one of our customer environments, and it turned out it was Malwarebytes that was running SBC host.
But look, it had the name malware in the name.
Yes,
the word malware was there. You were right. It was malware. It just happened to be Malwarebytes.
Running as an SBC host. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty smart, because malware runs as SBC host all the time.
You know what's funny, Alissa? I was taking a class with Ed Scotus, and taking a couple classes with Ed, from back in the day when I was taking classes at a particular organization. We'll stick with that, right? And he was like, talking about rootkits. And he's like, the best rootkit detection and defense is to be a rootkit, to already be in that space in the kernel and or memory to detect when malicious actors trying to be there. And I was like, whoa. And that's like, I don't know, 15 years later, I'm like, that's still like spot on, right? And that's some what we're talking about, is that some of the endpoint protection, anti-malware, that we use the antiquated term antivirus, right, can kind of look like the malware.
We heard you like rootkit, so we put a rootkit in your rootkit.
Right, exactly.
Not even just that, though. Like, you talk about some of the new hipster apps and whatever the latest, Web3 or web protocol that's UDP and live streaming quick, all the things that you would swear would be beaconing, would be some sort of persistent, using up all kinds of resources. Like, all those things are part of a lot of applications, and just how development has kind of evolved.
That's just Steam. It's okay. Which, I mean, we maybe could say is malware if you start looking at the process and the traffic and all that stuff. I'm like, what is that doing?
It's insane. The MSI installers actually kick in, injecting into Explorer to remove installation directories. I see that on a daily basis. And I'm like, this used to be like telltale sign of evil.
Yeah. Totally agree.
So didn't we bring Alissa on the show?
I was going to say, I do want to pivot, and I want to start with a little story. And I was telling Alissa this, like, as an interview, I try not to talk about myself, but I think this tees up what Alissa has been working on recently, like, really well. So when I was in college, I had this instructor, professor. His name was Doug, and like, he literally wanted to call us Doug. Is one of my greatest.
Not that Doug.
Not that Doug. Different Doug. Dr. Doug. A different Dr. Doug, actually. And he was like, and I did all the computer stuff for the environmental science program. So I minored in environmental science. One, because Doug was an amazing professor, and two, because I got to do computer stuff. And he's like, hey, you're good at this. You should like go do it, and like do it in the science program. I'm like, cool. And so he's like, as I progressed, I was getting ready to graduate. He's like, I need you like go on this interview. I'm like, okay. He's like, I got this friend. He's got like, it's the late 90s, so everyone has a web company. And he's like, just go in this interview. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, I don't want to make it like look. He's like, you'll be fine. So go in this interview. Now at this point, like, I had programmed in BASIC since I was really young, and I had started to learn C and done some stuff in C. And I get to this interview, and the person, I think he was the founder of the company, was like, we do everything in HTML. And like in 1998 or 1999, like HTML was still like sort of new, not as ubiquitous as it is now. Like most of us like understand HTML to a certain level because it's everywhere, right? It wasn't as in many places in 1999 as it is now. And I'm like, I don't know the answers to your questions, dude, because like, I don't know, I program in BASIC and C, and like HTML was kind of this like funny thing, and I don't know the exact answer to your question, and I didn't get the job. And my professor was Doug, being one of like an awesome mentor, like a tough mentor, but an awesome mentor. He was like, I explained the whole situation, and he was like, yeah, it's their loss. Don't worry about it. I'm like you got me this. He's like, nah, you're totally fine. Now, when I think about this today, when I was talking with Alissa, I was like, that's really a classic case of like an interview, like totally blown and going horribly wrong. Like not how we want to interview people today, and some of the ways in which still interviews are conducted for people to get into this field of cybersecurity, the folks asking really specific technical questions and things like that. And Alissa, you've been mentoring folks, thankfully, and conducting mock interviews, which made me think of this story. I'm like, oh, I wish I had mock interviews when I was interviewing. I had to go on like real interviews, which ended up being my mock interview, right?
That's it. And so the mock interview is supposed to give you those training wheels or the opportunity to make use of the training wheels should you choose to use them. Right. But, you know, job descriptions are getting a bit better and helping people out in preparation.
It's kind of like the murder board too. Like, I don't know that we want interviews to be like the murder board, right? Like there's a difference between a murder board and an interview. Sort of. There's some overlap there, but there's differences.
Depends on the toughness of the interview, dude. I've been on some interviews that are like, you know, I need shielding and tasers and crap, man. It's bad.
Yes. But that's not how you're training. So how many mock interviews have you done with, how many do you do, Alissa?
I've been about 50 in the last 4 months. So enough to get tired of my shtick. I was sharing with you, I do the technical hiring manager interview, and I have been a hiring manager before, but I get to try on the CISO title as well to do a final round interview. And that is glorious because that's the best part of being a CISO is just to say that you're one.
Yeah. It's like, Alissa, wow. I'm producing this new TV show, and I want you to do the screen reading for the role of CISO.
Dude, I'm all over that. I got so many cool questions. I got the whole setup. I got the whole shtick. Yeah, social engineers would be super proud of me. That's all I have to say. But there are some key takeaways that I recognize. Now, my source for the mock interviews they're coming from a cybersecurity boot camp that takes them approximately 6 months. Mm-hmm. And there's a huge delta that I've noticed for folks who have done extracurriculars, like gotten behind the keyboard and done like try hack me, over the wire, under the wire. Yeah, some of that which is going to force you to find your way out of a box, or to a box, depending on the scenario.
It's really interesting how we conduct, these interviews and what experiences go into it. And, I think that folks, if you're in a 6-month boot camp, it doesn't surprise me that like, if you've tackled something else, and no matter how much you've like actually absorbed from that, you can use that as an experience. Like, I'm not the expert in that area, but I wrote something in C that kind of mimicked that, and it wasn't the greatest thing, but I did it for the experience, and I don't remember exactly how I put it together, but when you present me with that challenge, I draw on that experience. I don't have to remember 100% or even close to 100% of like all the code I wrote for like a port scanner I wrote in C, right? But I draw on that experience when I'm presented with challenges both in the interview and on the job. And I think a candidate that can do that may be a really positive attribute of that candidate.
Absolutely. I have one of my mentees that played in Boss of the Sock when Splunk was having their annual virtual conference, and he finished middle of the pack, had never been behind a SIM before, had never used any of the query language, and he now has exactly what you're saying. Paul, he has this story where he can be like, yeah, I've been behind Splunk. I found some things. He has this badge they send out for all participants, and he's damn proud of it. So,
and he's not the world's foremost expert. Like, we were talking about Linux in the previous set. I'm like, so Hal Pomerantz has forgotten more about Linux and Unix than I will ever know. And I love Hal and respect him tremendously. But not everyone is Hal on a particular subject. But like you're saying, if a candidate has had an experience and can learn and grow from that and apply those skills, however much they absorb from that experience or not, if they can apply that, that's a positive.
I think from, not to rain on or to steal Alyssa's thunder, that's from Massachusetts. Woo! Yeah, not to steal any of her thunder, but whenever we've conducted interviews, and one of the things that I really appreciate is, asking someone a really hard question and them going, okay, well, I don't know how to do that, but
based on my experience
and this other thing that I've done, I'd probably approach the problem like this. I don't know if it's the right way, but these were some of the things that I'd start to look for. Maybe these are some of the things that I'd consider looking at. And understanding what their thought process for solving those problems is huge.
Yes.
Huge.
Right. So let me turn that pivot into a question, Alissa. What questions do you ask people in these mock interviews? Can you give some examples?
We can talk about it.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah.
In your job. Horrible question.
I describe the company and then I say, hey, well, okay, based on the description and what you know about threat actors, why would we get attacked? And it's still open-ended, just like you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, what do we have to steal? What's the deal? A lot of folks
do some threat. Have them do some threat modeling based on
the fly.
That's great. Yeah.
Yes. When I'm playing the CISO, I ask them, I am so tired of people asking me what keeps me up at night. Please tell me what should keep me up at night. See?
People asking you that question.
Yeah. So I admit to them I'm going to steal their answers and I'm going to regurgitate them, so that it better be good, right? So I don't know.
How about this? Why should I sleep at night? What should put me to bed and make me cuddly with a teddy bear?
That's a great question,
I like
Josh.
that.
Yes.
A really bad book.
It's true. It's so cliche, though, Alissa, to ask the CISO what keeps them up at night. Like, that is one of the most cliche
Red Bull and cocaine.
C-level questions, right? Yeah.
Wait, what? No, it's not that kind of interview. My bad.
All right, this is my cribs, yo. And up here is where we do the Red Bull and the cocaine. It's the Larry Pesci room.
Most creative answer I've gotten thus far. But yeah, also, like, how do we retain talent? Because I pivot off of that and say, like, my one of my top concerns is retaining talent. I invest all this time in employing you guys. You see these experiences, and how do I keep you? So I forced them to answer that question as they're like coming in my fake mock interview door, and that's been pretty good.
But that's interesting, Alissa, right? Like, usually the question's in reverse, right? It's the employee asking, like, why should I stay? But you flip that around, it's the employer going, what can I do to make you stay? In that,
what do I do to make sure you're happy?
Make sure you're happy
and
you want to stay here. That's
it.
Yeah.
That's it. So, I mean, I have them walk me through the kill chain or the remote exploitation model, because it's all about the experiential recount of how an attacker would move through stages. And, like, I'm not particular about the semantics. Like, they can go with whatever framework they choose to. But stopping at delivery or exploitation is always wrong.
Yeah.
There's more to it than that. That's insulting.
But I agree, Alissa. I think when you're interviewing a candidate for any defensive security role, you want to gauge their understanding of, like, how does an attacker operate? How would you threat model? How would you think about an attacker operating? Because that's crucial to their job, which means we need to teach that to people who are applying to jobs.
Truth. Yeah, one of my favorite things. So only because, like, it's so expansive. You really can take any story that's in the news and, like, drop it in to make a good plot line. I just think there's but that's it. So largely my recommendations are to like put yourself in the path of that real world learning, whether it be listening to practitioners who are standing up, giving presentations. There's so much content there. Or putting yourself in the seat and going against some boxes in some of these online challenges. I think that's good. Then you'll realize, like, they told me to get the flag, and I exploited the box. Like, there's the next step.
Yeah. And I mean, there's really a lot. I mean, when we look at the landscape today, there's a lot of materials for folks that want to get into cybersecurity to study. Right, and I think what you're gauging is their interest and their motivation, right, to consume that materials and give their take on it. And it's not really about accuracy and knowing all the technical details, but how much have you consumed and what do you think about it, kind of thing, and how would you approach the problem?
I think I remember sitting at my cubicle. Everything is like a snapshot back to Mandy, but I was listening to my boss then ask questions over the phone to candidates who were seeking to join the SOC. And it was like just a bunch of ports. Hey, do you know what's this port? What's that port? What's this? And
totally that's been on interviews where they ask those questions, right? Like,
yes.
What's this TCP header offset? Blah blah blah. And like,
I don't know. Google will tell me.
And like, just because you know the answer doesn't mean you're necessarily going to be an effective whatever role you're applying for, right?
Mm-hmm. How else can you whittle down the pool of candidates, though? I think that there's a real challenge out there for hiring managers who may have a few entry-level positions and hundreds, if not more, resumes, CVs, LinkedIn profiles to sift through. I mean, what do you all recommend?
What do we recommend in terms of what now?
How to whittle down the candidate pool for entry-level positions. And yes, I am asking on behalf of my mentees.
Wait, stop. So you want to find out on behalf of your mentees how to get them in the how to slide them in the various doors faster, or did I misunderstand you?
No, that's exactly the question is, well, how do you stand out based on y'all's stuff? I have my own definition of how they can stand out.
Do you want the honest answer?
Yeah, good. Josh, you go first.
That's actually fairly easy. So, okay, the biggest problem is not standing out. At the current environment, the biggest problem is getting past the HR barrier. I have so many people that I've had to go around HR and introduce them to people at a company because HR auto-rejects them because they're missing one specific term in the resume, or they're missing, or they have something in the resume that's not perfect. One guy was an auditor for a year rather than a security engineer. But he's like, I did auditing for a year so I could learn what they're looking for, and so I could be a better security engineer and a security architect. And they rejected him because of that. And it's ridiculous. So realistically, the biggest barrier for most newbies, for most even experienced people, is HR. So the best thing there is networking. The best thing there is gaming the system, to be honest with you. And I'll tell you, there's actually a guy that streams on Twitch, Jason Blanchard, who I think...
Who's that guy?
Larry.
I heard he works in marketing.
That guy.
He's fantastic. He actually streams on Twitch twice a week, Banjo Crashland on Twitch, about how to get past the HR barrier and about how to increase how to make your resume better and how to get a job and all that kind of stuff. And he talks about, he's actually, I mean, Jason's I love him dearly. He's a great guy. He's a good friend as well.
I once spilled a glass of ice water in his lap at a rrestaurant to get him to come back to my room and change his pants. I mean, that's what we tell everybody.
We love Jason. We've known Jason for a long time. Josh is what we're saying.
No, I know. Yeah, but what he did was, he said a great thing. What he said was, you find 10 companies that you want to work for, and you don't apply to them. You find the 10 companies you want to work for, and you determine how you're going to get the relationship with the people that are hiring or are above the hiring managers, so that you can make sure that when your resume comes in, attention is paid to it. Ooh. And that's the way to do it. Now, once that happens, how do you stand out? Well, I mean, of course, Alissa, signed my resume. Come on. But no,
But no, I think so.
Go ahead.
Josh. I think what you said is very important, right? Is breaking down those barriers, right? Once you've broken down those barriers on both sides, right? Is for me attitude, aptitude, right, are the kind of general terms that I look for in candidates, whether it's a cybersecurity role or not a cybersecurity role, it doesn't matter. Attitude, aptitude, like you got to be a good fit. Beyond that, I think the number one thing that I test for or want to have a conversation about in an interview is problem solving and troubleshooting, right? So I tend to, in Alissa, I kind of give you this example, right? When I bring candidates in, I tend to take a problem or challenge that I'm encountering now. That could be technical. That could be like, hey, like how do we grow the podcast? How do we improve the production? Like whatever challenge I have, or maybe a problem I've already solved, or I think I've solved, right? And I present that challenge to the interviewee, and I'm like, how would you solve it? And what I'm looking for there is not like the syntax of the right answer. I'm looking for the process that they go through to problem solve and troubleshoot for that answer. So like for me, if we're talking about like a technical skill, other than like, of course, attitude and aptitude are very, very important, right? And that's more the person's personality. I want to get to know the person. That's fun. That's the first thing, right? This like technical skill that I test for is problem solving and troubleshooting. Because that can be a difficult thing to teach. It's kind of built into most people's DNA. I'm not saying you can't learn it, because you can. Most people kind of have the DNA that's going to make them a great problem solver, troubleshooter, or not. You can learn it, but again,
good advice. Absolutely.
Give him a problem that's impossible to solve. Like
I don't give him an impossible one.
Listen. No, one that is impossible to solve. What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite Star Wars movie, and why is it The Phantom Menace?
John Strand. I'm going to tell us on air, right? But one of the questions that he told me that he asked people is like, look, you're locked in a room and there's a single light. How would you get that light to turn off? Like how many, and like, so you give an answer and they're like, all right, give me the next answer. Like, give me the next answer, and just keep asking until they run out of answers. And I think, because there's no right or wrong answer, that's testing some of that attitude and aptitude, but also problem solving. Like how, it's also testing, I think, one of the greatest hacker skills. If you call yourself a hacker, like one of the things you have to have is that persistence, right? To go, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. But that's not just a hacker either. Whether you're a developer, no matter what your role is, like you can't give up on the troubleshooting. Whether you're a doctor, whatever it is, you can't give up on the problem solving and troubleshooting of that. So he wants to test the potential employees. How far will you go? How many different answers are you going to give me before you give up? That's not bad. It's a little harsh, but not bad.
I like that.
Alyssa's taking notes. She's like, wait, I'm going to incorporate this now into my
yes, that.
I will tell you that the biggest thing for me when I was hiring people was that they did things to learn all the time. So you have a home lab, you're running, whether it's a server over in the corner or an AWS environment, so that you can try things out. What's your network at your house? That was a typical interview question for me. Like, there's a lot of things about it.
I mean, that, again, I hate telling my own... my story that Paul then Lee. So
that.
Most of our listeners have heard me tell the story, right? When I showed to a job interview and they're like, how do you know NFS? And I'm like, oh, I have it in my home lab. They're like, what? This is literally 2000, the year 2000. They're like, how do you have that in your home lab? I'm like, oh, like I have this server rack in my house. They're like, no way. I'm like, I actually brought a picture of it and I slid over a printed piece of paper.
It's in his wallet.
And it's a picture of the server rack in his mom's dining room.
And they're like, is this in your house? I'm like, that's my mom's house, actually. And it's her living room. And they're like, whoa, hey. I'm like, but I configured a bunch of Unix systems. I put an NFS on it, and I built a lab in my mom's living room. And that, apparently spoke volumes, and I did get the job. I'm not
NFS
suggesting
volumes. I see what you did there.
Yeah, I'm not also not suggesting you go do that necessarily. I'm also not suggesting that 100% of the time is going to get you the job, right? But to Josh's point, right, that kind of shows the right, I think, level of interest potentially. Sorry,
I will, and Lee, I will caveat to that, and like, you should never stop learning.
Yeah, agreed.
Folks talk about, how do you do so well at the podcast? How do you do well at your job and those types of things? And, my answer for so many years, and it is still true. I mean, for 2 decades, I get done with my day job. We spend a little time with family, and the kids go to bed, or it's evening time. And what do? I sit there and I multitask in front of the TV. And while I'm taking breaks to watch the important
I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it. I swear to God, I'm not saying it.
Yeah.
No,
don't say it.
It's like that meme. You ever see that meme of like the cartoon character and he's laying there in bed and then there's like the little bubble and he's like, I wonder if, like, whatever the question is, and then it shows him like trying to fall asleep, and then like the next little panel is like he wakes up and he's like on his phone or computer like searching, like I got to find the answer. That's me, right? I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to relax and like watch TV, but like I got to break up my labs because like, can you run Docker within Docker on a certain platform? Like, I got to know the answer to this.
Yeah,
like, I got to Google it, right?
And then I got to try it.
I got to try it.
Like, oh shit, like, I just read this article about, let me see one of my open tabs here, about building a stealth AirTag clone. Like, I got to read through this, and now I got to get my Bluetooth adapter, and I got to go check this out. And
mine are literally like
Josh
how and why to run Docker inside of Docker. Like, that's the last one.
Josh just went, what? I'll send you the
I'm
link,
looking at
Josh.
stealth AirTag clones because that's cool.
Josh, I'll send you the link in Slack.
Alex, it defined you positive security. I just got it already.
Yeah,
Thanks.
positive security.
So,
Sorry, Lee, you had a point.
Yeah.
so the point I was going to make is we all, cherish continuous learning and self-starting. The trick is how to, what have they done that's anywhere relevant to the posting? I mean, we can train people the relevant skills, but how far away from knowing what the current job set is do you go before you say, hey, it's great that you're mastering Python, but this is an accounting position, or you know what I mean?
Heck yeah.
How do you make it appeal?
How flexible are you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that brings me to a point that one of my colleagues made, gatekeeping. And what is that all about? What is, in fact, gatekeeping? Is it requiring analytical minds? Is it requiring a security plus? Is it, I know Josh mentioned getting around HR as being a huge impediment. And sometimes it is those requirements that are built in as like the basics.
Yeah, so I'm going to slightly play devil's advocate, Alissa, right? We talked about attitude, aptitude, testing for the right kind of higher level skill sets. There are some exceptions that I personally make to this that I want to throw out there as well. So, like, we built an application in Python Flask. And so when I think about the skill set you need, like, there's not just one gate, like there's multiple. Like, you got to know, you don't have to, right? But like in ideal skill set would be you've got to know Linux, you've got to know containers, you've got to know some Python. You probably, it would help if you knew Flask, and it would probably help if you knew JavaScript as well, and like some database stuff as well. And like, I'm not saying you got to be an expert in all of those areas, but if you've got zero experience in all of those areas, those are like enough gates where I'm like, you're probably not the ideal candidate, right? Now, if you can check a few boxes, if you're like, hey, like, I know Linux, I know some containers, and like, I've coded in, like, I've got a GitHub repository, and I wrote one Python script. I'm like, okay, like, you've passed enough gates where if you've got the right attitude and aptitude, I can teach you the rest. But there is kind of like a ramp up, right? Like, you do have to assess the person's skills to some degree. I don't think as granular as, to Josh's point, most HR departments are scrutinizing a skill set.
Good answer. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I hate to do that because I don't want to just, but again, there's a bar, right? That it needs to be not as rigid as as some make it out to be, but there needs to be some gates as well. Like you need to have a base skill set, which I practice what I preach in that when I do get a new intern here at Security Weekly, I'm like, regardless of your skill set, task one, I'm gonna give you a computer and you're gonna put Linux on it from scratch, like without my direct help. Like you can ask me questions all day. Like you can ask me questions, like struggle with something for 20, 30 minutes, then ask me a question, totally fine. Ask me as many questions as you want. Try and figure out on your own for 20, 30 minutes, then come ask me a question. But you're going to build your own Linux workstation, and that's your workstation that you're going to have when you're here as an intern, because that's not really helping me, but it's going to help you to build that base level skill set. So when you go to those interviews, you have a base level, and that's important. For technical jobs, not that
sounds like a sweet deal,
right?
I have noticed the same thing: the morphing of job descriptions, having that know 3 of the following, and then there's a list of 10 potential skills, that you could be bringing to bear. That's harder for HR, though.
Right.
Here's the thing: in our and I'm going to do philosophical for 2 seconds, and I know we're running on time. I'm sorry. But if you go back 20 years as a security person, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Back in the day when I was young and Lee was still old. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Get off of my lawn!
You had to know everything to be a security person. You knew how to hack. You knew how to wire things. You knew everything, right? And today we have so many specialities that it's not even funny, okay? So, and that's really cool. But the thing is that these specialities overlap in interesting ways and in interesting places. Digital forensics has an incredible overlap with networking in NTP, okay, and cell towers and mobile enterprise mobile management and things like that, because you have to be able to get things out of those devices and out of those enterprise mobility management solutions and understand the time stamping and time stomping for anti-forensics and things like that. And I'm trying to hit things that, Alissa, you'll go, that makes sense. And so forgive me if I'm not. And but there's a lot of crossover for a lot of fields. Yes, would you agree?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And so HR might only see a job description with these 10 terms, when in reality, if you have these 3 terms, I'm fascinated by you and want to know more.
But Josh, where I see HR departments getting tripped up is we know as practitioners and folks that are close to technology that there's overlaps in certain areas. However, if I'm hiring I need a Windows expert, but the person I'm interviewing is an expert in Linux, like that's not going to transfer, right? So there's I think some education we need to do of HR departments as well, and work closely with them, and I think most of us are more than willing to do that, right? So my point is, there's areas where there's overlap, and there's areas where there's totally not overlap. You can be a highly skilled person in one area but not another. Linux and Windows are maybe one of those. Maybe as a security practitioner you've got enough knowledge in both, and I totally respect that, right? We got to construct the interview process to kind of unpack that.
I think also the resume receiving process probably should be refined. I think about some of the ways in which, when I was looking to hire back in the day for a security position, and we went outside the organization, it wasn't internal, that HR received the resumes. But the review was conducted of all of the resumes by HR and the hiring manager. So that there wasn't that gatekeeping of HR saying, well, this person doesn't have their CISP. Well, I don't care if they don't have a CISP.
Yeah,
said
totally.
We'd like them to have it, and that's your gate. That's your gate thing. But they've got 15 years of demonstrated experience that if they walked into the CISP exam today, they could nail it. Like,
right? Like if you're looking at someone to do blue team or red team, right, and they're a 15-year Microsoft Windows admin, I'm like, dude, like, no, we're interviewing this person. Like, we're totally interviewing. Like, if they've got the desire to be in security,
they've seen some shit.
They've seen some shit, and I want that knowledge. Like, totally want that knowledge, right? But if the person with 15 years of Windows experience is applying to be a Linux administrator, like, okay, maybe that's not the right fit, right?
that ongoing learning, like always learning, that's like in this industry, no matter which path you choose, you have to have that. And I think the more things you can learn and dive into, like you'd be surprised how many years later something's going to correlate where you were doing help desk and deploying printers. That'll help you when you're breaking into a building and you remember like something about this printer that you could, take something off and put something in there. Those things pay off long run. So you have to have that continual learning desire. B, you have to always want and be learning and know all the things about all the things and continually do that. But you also have to have the just-in-time learning aspect, and that's a key quality that I would say not very many people have, and you can actually see it in some people by asking something they're not going to know, maybe quantum computing or something, and you can hear them typing, Googling, like that they know how to look stuff up, they know how to answer the question. They don't hide the fact that they're searching it and looking at it and saying, oh, okay, so here's what I know about this based on what I just searched. Yep. That just-in-time learning is a key critical aspect of because of all the things.
Tyler, and you and I go through this when we talk about Windows. Like, I know enough to be dangerous.
Yep.
Like, I know enough to hack Windows or to like do certain things. And if I run up and I either ask Tyler or I Google search it or like whatever. If it's the printer thing, you have Boris Fedoruk on speed dial. That's true. That too. That's a great point, Larry. It's a great point. But like, you also know your limits too. I think if you're, you got to be honest with yourself. And I think, Alissa, conducting these mock interviews, right? I would also look for people who are honest with themselves about what they know and what their experiences are and how they might learn stuff. If I was being interviewed and people ask me about like my Windows experience, like I tell you, like, look, Linux is my strong point. Like I can do the Windows stuff like when I have to, and it's like a necessary thing that I know, right? But that's not my strong suit. So being honest and transparent is part of that process.
Being honest and knowing that they are willing to go learn. Like, maybe I don't know Linux or Docker, but if you guys are thinking about me and you're interested, like
that's when Tyler asks me questions. It goes both ways. Because you can't be an expert in every single thing.
What's that saying? A jack of all trades, master of none.
It's so true.
But arguably, or I think some of us in later on in our careers that necessarily doesn't apply. In that in the pen test realm, that and some of those that I often refer to myself as a jack of all trades, master of some. Because I've spent enough years in the trenches that I've really become a master in a couple of different things, but not all of it.
All of it. But
and it looks like Lee's got a comment in there.
But we know where to go to get to be enough of an expert in a thing on a pen. That's a hacker quality, right? I want to go
just-in-time learning.
Yeah, that just-in-time learning is important. Lee.
Yeah. So my question for Alissa is this: we spent a lot of time talking about people's willingness to learn and explore and grow. Is there a balance where an applicant can show too much willingness to learn absolutely everything versus getting, having solid experience under there?
Great question, Lee.
Negative?
Yes. Thank you for putting all of us in check. It's a great point.
Perpetual learner, like never a doer, always just signing up for additional training, never executing. You might think also categorize that person as they just haven't found their niche yet.
But that's a great positive spin on that, for sure.
So there's three things. There's a perpetual learner. There's someone who can put that knowledge to use, or some of that knowledge at least. Sometimes there's knowledge you're like, oh, that's interesting, but I don't have any really way to use it. But as long as they're doing some of it.
Yeah, but I don't have any way to use it today.
Wait, bear with me one more second. I think one of the most important pieces is the third aspect, which is able to integrate that knowledge into an overall broader aspect of expertise. So is not just able to learn something right here, but is able to say, oh, I know these things over here, and I can integrate them and become better at more things because I'm using the knowledge intelligently. Wisdom, if you will.
I like that.
Yeah, Josh, that's a great line between knowledge and wisdom, right? I also think it's the wisdom to know the difference on like things that you are an expert or pseudo-expert on in other areas where you're like, I can maybe come up to speed and be a pseudo-expert on versus things that you're like, like that would require way more training in my realm kind of thing, right? That's I think as you mature in your career, wisdom is knowing the difference between all those three things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Remember, knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in the fruit salad.
So through all
I agree. And also not putting the fruit in the salad. I hate salad that has like apples and crap in it and stuff like that. Like, I don't like my salads to have fruit in it.
Cancel the delivery. Cancel the delivery.
So hey,
And no pineapple on pizza, because pineapple's a fruit, has no business on pizza.
and we're no, I'm kidding. So hey,
I just aggravated 40% of our audience.
And so I've got a question. And as we're sitting here going through this segment, and
pineapple on pizza, you like Hawaiian pizza?
I do.
You fall in that category.
I do.
You like fruit on the pizza.
I do.
Do you like fruit in the beer?
Yeah.
Fruit in the beer.
Yep. Fruit in the
fruit
beer.
in the salad.
Yep.
So you're a big fan of fruit. Okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I like fruit in my bourbon too. That's called an old fashioned though.
Yeah. That's,
So all right. So as we're sitting here thinking about this, I derived a new interview question that I want to use. And it's based on a recent
Pineapple on pizza?
No, it's based on a recent problem.
Do you like pineapple on pizza? Yes. No, you're not getting the job.
It's based on It's based on a recent problem that I had.
Yes, good.
And it's something that uses some problem-solving skills in an area.
Yes, you faked it.
In an area in which you may not be comfortable. So, Alissa.
Okay. You're going to try it on me? All right,
I'm going to try it on you.
Thing.
I'm going to try it on you.
I love this already. I don't know what the question's going to be, but I love this already.
You don't know what the question's going to be. So I've got a problem that I need to solve and something that I'm trying to solve currently. And what I have is I have a billiard ball and I need to cut it in half. The problem is that the bandsaw that I have goes down in a downward motion when you try to cut it. And what happens when you press the sphere into a billiard ball using your hands is the saw grabs the ball and it flings it and takes out your teeth.
Been there.
Yep.
Maybe not with a billiard ball, but it's certainly other things in the workshop.
So how do you cut a billiard ball in half?
Can I automate that? There you go. Automation.
Yeah. Automation, but so how will we automate it? What's the framework we need for automation?
And so it will ensue me trying to describe some machine that will hold the ball in place, another that will push the ball forward.
Brilliant.
And that's the difficult one.
Brilliant.
See, but Alissa, what I love about that, Alissa, is that like you don't have to be an expert in like saws or woodworking, but what you described was the process. Like, because like I've done some woodworking, and like my mind went to the same place. But you described the process. Yep. So like you got the job. Because you described the process.
Totally. Yeah. Because it's exactly what I did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's exactly what I did.
Yeah. You did this?
Yeah.
You did what?
Yeah.
Can I give my answer?
Because Larry, like I would take a clamp and I would hold it on the miter saw table. So hold something in place to apply pressure to both sides of the ball equally.
The problem is when you apply pressure, it's only two very small points, and then the ball will spin.
Because you got to, like Alissa said, you've got to be able to push it through a blade in addition to applying pressure.
I don't think that's actually a correct answer. I mean, I think, and I'd have to do the research, and that would be section one of my solution would be Google it to find out what the inside of a billiard ball is made of. Ooh. So to see if it's a solid sphere of a hard substance, if it's like a...
But you need to also apply...
It is a solid sphere of a solid substance.
Apply lubrication.
Then I would put it in a jig.
Yes.
Okay.
And I would use a blade and cleave it in half rather than try to cut it in half.
Interesting. Okay. So the cleaving would actually shatter it irregularly.
Okay. I'm glad I have a spare.
Ask me how I know this.
That was part of the plan.
Ask me how I know this.
Josh, you don't get the job. Alissa gets the job.
No, he gets a job because the point that he made is he made a jig. Because you know what I did?
You made a jig.
I made a jig that is a clamp.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a hole inside of a board that's just slightly smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And you put the billiard ball in, and then you use a rubber mallet to tap, tap, tap. So it's a press fit. And then
I was thinking of actually taking a 4x4 and cutting a half sphere, cutting it in half, and then cutting a half sphere in each of them. So you put the whole thing is encased.
Also, as
Yeah.
the interviewee, I'm asking why we want to cut a billiard ball in half.
Because we can.
What are you asking these useless questions?
Why do you want to hack that window
There
system?
might be an alternate solution.
What's the goal? What's the goal here? What's the goal
because
here?
we can.
Okay.
Because we can.
Perfect.
Because we can get millions of dollars.
Hopefully,
We're doing it for the lulls.
Hopefully,
Dude,
Alyssa,
if it's for millions of dollars, I'll cleave the entire damn pool table, okay?
Yeah, no, and literally, this is a problem that I had earlier this week that I need to try to solve, and I think I solved it. But the even better part is, after I finished it and I solved it, I found another way to do it.
Oh, so like Perl, there's multiple ways to implement the solution. I see.
Yep, because
Use
once
Pearl, you're just as crazy as Larry. So it
Right.
works either
because
way.
then once to add to this, because once I got it cut in half, I needed to drill a hole through the remaining half.
So you have a new problem.
I did, but it was off center.
Oops.
On purpose?
No, it was supposed to be on center.
Do you have a lathe?
Oops.
Bingo! You chuck the billiard ball into a lathe.
And you'd use a dial indicator to center it, and then you, use the headstock of the lathe to drill the hole.
You do it in half, and then your hole is still in the center because it's using the same plane.
And why were you? Again, I'm curious why you were going down this path.
I will show you later.
Okay, good.
It's a pretty cool thing.
Ooh, all right.
I mean, I won't. Can't show you later tonight. I don't have it with me.
Yeah.
Actually, I do have pictures.
Yeah. I want to see that.
I was going to say, Paul, if he bends over when he says, "Okay, hang on, I'll show this to you," just run, okay?
Long story short, they cutting the billiard ball in half. We're actually cutting a slice out of the center so we can drill a hole into it, so it effectively becomes this really oversized ring, which you turn into effectively brass knuckles.
Oh, interesting.
With the actual 8-ball from a billiard ball that gets punched, you're punching someone in the face with a pool ball, billiard ball.
And this was just because you
He's sending this
because I
to
can.
because you can.
Say it again.
That's a horrible idea.
Said it's
All of this for Larry's 30-second TikTok video that shows you how to do it, so he gets 1 million views on TikTok.
I gotta monetize
No, I mean,
that.
like, seriously, if you punch somebody with that and it breaks, you're impaling yourself with sharp edges.
It is not going to break. So let's put it this way: we're totally down a rabbit hole.
Hold on, density calculation for a human skull versus density of billiard ball. Like we're getting way.
Oh
down.
my God, we're doing the Silicon Valley. How many people can be jerked off? Like,
Yes, Silicon Valley. Yes.
So Josh, if you use a vintage billiard ball that is made of phenolic resin, the phenolic resin is the same thing that is used for. Oh God!
Bakelite stuff?
I did not Bakelite. The next stuff. God, man, why is this escaping me?
Alyssa, I know you're honored to be part of these types of conversations.
It's effectively
Physical composition of billiard balls.
Yeah, resin with a fabric imbued in it, micarta, and they build airplane propellers in World War II out of micarta.
Wait, those old pool balls are micarta?
They're not micarta. They're the same resin that they used for micarta.
Oh, okay.
So it's the resin. It's just the glue. Yeah.
Which also has asbestos, World War II era stuff that you should probably not.
When you get over 40 years old, you're either really into World War II history or really into smoking meat, or maybe both.
I resemble that remark.
I mean, we've got Putin now. We could smoke World War II autocrats.
Huh.
And I brought it right back to the original hacking of Russia. There we go.
Oh, I got you jerky. It's Putin flavored.
Alyssa, I did want to ask you. You said some of the students that you're conducting mock interviews with are in a cybersecurity boot camp. Bringing it back to cybersecurity, I want to hear more about that because I think that's really it's something we've been talking about, kind of off air. Security Weekly host, like folks that don't want to maybe go get a 2 or 4 year degree, like they want to get a degree, but they want it to be in cybersecurity. They don't want to study history and all that other stuff in college. Again, everyone's journey is different, but like it'd be interesting to have a boot camp that maybe in cybersecurity you could get a degree. So I want to hear more about some of the options. Yeah, or certificate or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't purport to have the perfect or to be helping the perfect boot camp. So I won't say the name. If you're interested, you can look me up, and it's under volunteer experiences on my LinkedIn. But honestly, it is another avenue of approach. And a lot of times it's for career transitioners. Mm-hmm. The most interesting career transitioner, she was working doing art restoration, like recovering beautiful old masterpieces.
Yeah, there's like that whole story of like what's the Da Vinci painting? There was a whole documentary on the Da Vinci painting. It was someone that like, no, it was. It escapes me. The
Vitruvian Man?
No. In any case, yeah. But so she transitioned into cybersecurity from art restoration.
Yes.
Did she have a look to go? Was she looking to go into forensics, perhaps?
I know it would have been a natural fit.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see where she lands exactly. But that attention to detail, I think it's applicable, and you find it in a lot of different fields. So there's a lot of folks who are IT and want to dabble in cybersecurity or get an extra advantage, put it on their resume that they completed some additional training. I think like there's a cautionary tale though, because a lot of the boot camps, and there are tons of them right now, it seems so easy. Like if I just devote myself for 6 months, I'll come out and know this stuff. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of effort. There's like a lot of effort that's required. And I just wanted to make mention of that because it is also a differentiator in the field. Folks who thought it was just going to be, I'll bide my time for 6 months. Others who are like, oh, like every concept, I have to apply it to real world scenario in order to synthesize it and be able to speak to it. That's the most important part, is to be able to get it out of your mind into conversation so you can pass that hiring manager interview.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think really like when we look at our field in cybersecurity and many other fields, right? The traditional 4-year degree will remain an option, right? But for many fields, I think there's a huge opportunity in the trade fields. If you treat cybersecurity as like a trade field, right, there's a huge opportunity there for people to do that, which is why it intrigues me when you were, saying you're doing mock interviews for folks that are like, I graduated from high school, let's say, and I want to go in cybersecurity, but like, I don't want to spend 4 years getting like a full degree. Like I want to go learn the cybersecurity stuff, much like
I play games. I play games on Steam. I can install Linux.
But like also like I want to be an HVAC person. I want to be an electrician, a plumber, a welder, whatever the trade may be. Mm-hmm. I want to be a cybersecurity practitioner. Like, do I have to go get like the full 4-year degree? Like, okay, like that's still I don't want to discount that as an option, right? But there's other options, and I want to see us evangelize those options and support those options as well, because as many of us know here talking on the show now and many of us listening, like some of the best people that we've worked with are like, yeah, I don't have a college degree. Like I graduated from high school and they learned all this stuff on our own, and they can program to their heart's content. They can understand. So like there's so many people, like we shouldn't basically silo people into like, you got to graduate high school and go get a 4-year degree. That's not an option for me.
I think we really do have to set those expectations though, right? Mm-hmm. Like the expectation on both sides of this, like you can go get a cybersecurity degree now and graduate with a master's or even a doctorate or even, right. 4-year degree.
And I don't want to discount that, Tyler. I mean, to your point, Tyler, I don't want to discount that. Like that's a path and that's great. And that I don't want to like poo-poo people.
Like setting those expectations on both sides. Like here's the things that will make your life easier if you do go get a degree, but you can't expect to get out, get a senior role, go pen test right out of the gate. Like you got to do your time at a help desk, and you should probably go do some SOC work. You should probably do some, junior IR work and get out in the field and understand the technologies. So don't set the expectations that they're going to get out, make $150,000 a year and go get that first offensive or pen test role. That's not realistic, whether you're getting a degree or not. And then tell them the advantages and disadvantages of not getting a degree. If you don't get a degree, you may not qualify for certain government contracts or work that you may be interested in. Or if you only go get certs and you are interested in that, like, you can't stop. You can't expect to get in the door, and you're going to be doing a lot of interviews. You're going to get, maybe 10, 15 interviews, and those certs will get you in the door, but those are not going to guarantee a job. And the job that you do get, like, make sure it's something you're interested in, or take something that will apply and be applicable, maybe not directly, but you'll gain knowledge to move forward those offensive.
But I think right now what we have, and Alissa, you said you've done 50 mock interviews, right? Is the apprenticeship that's kind of like an informal apprenticeship right now that I'd like to see be more formal. Do you agree?
You mean internship or just
right? Your fellowship, internship, like whatever it is, right? Like that
journeyman. Why don't we have
journeyman? Right, like that style process. Yeah.
Right. I understand what you're saying. Yeah. Something like a feeder that will get you into the career. And I'm always of the mind, like, you work for a big company, they have some tuition reimbursement, or they'll reimburse you for your certification attempts. I mean, there's so much opportunity out there. Yeah. The
problem there, Alissa, is that most of the companies these days are looking for entry-level people with 6 years of experience. And it's very frustrating for the people that are actually entry-level to get in the door. And so
that needs to change, Josh. I agree.
That's one of the reasons that I'm actually trying to build. Yeah, I'm working. So I'm totally plugging my nonprofit, but I mean, we're building an assessment standard so that it has exactly that: apprentice, journeyman, and then master. Master assessors.
It also allows them to see, gain knowledge from each of the different areas that they're studying, and hopefully they can go cross-discipline and get some exposure, so that early on, maybe they don't even want to do offensive work like that. It's very tedious to drill down in C2, stand up infrastructure, look at, useless protocols and technologies that you may not be interested in. Maybe you're more apt for defensive work or SOC analysis work or even IR, making
a lot
sure
of different paths
without putting all that time and energy into something that may not apply.
Now, Alissa, you mentioned art restoration, right? And this is totally somewhat unrelated, but related to social engineering. Salvatore Mundi and the Lost Leonardo, like, there's multiple documentaries on this, and I've been meaning to, it's flagged in like my watch history. I want to go watch these documentaries, right? Like, that is there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. Like, was it original Da Vinci? Was it the person that restored it? It was sold at like high prices in auction, all that stuff. There's some social engineering, I think, that is associated with that, and there's multiple documentaries about Salvatore Mundi, which is it was allegedly a Leonardo da Vinci that was restored by an artist, I believe, that was in New York, right? That was this high-end artwork that they kind of relate to what we would relate to as social engineering. And then I didn't go watch that, but then I went and watched Sour Grapes, about like another kind of social engineering type adventure, if you will, of a person that was faking really high-end wines. Like, this person knew wines, they loved really like expensive, rare wines, and then was able to, like, with their experience, his name was Rudy, I forget his last name, but his name was Rudy, and he was like, I'm into wines, like, got into, like, socially engineered everyone who was into this high-end wine, buying $200,000 bottles of wine at auction, social engineer them to go, like, I know what, and he did. He knew his wine really well. But in the background, he was like, if I take these wines and I blend them together and I make the label look really old, and I take this bottle of a certain weight and I recork it and I blend these wines together, I can sell this for $20,000, $50,000, $100,000 as this really rare vintage wine and make a profit on it. It's a really just Rudy Knierewan, right? Is that how you say his last name? I forget how to pronounce it. Knierewan, yeah. Awesome like social engineering at its finest. Really cool story. I'm segueing way off topic now. Yeah.
I think there's another art fraudster that's also covered on a documentary on Netflix. It's a woman who's like just doing it at her home,
Yeah.
I can't wait to watch it. Yeah, it's gonna be good stuff.
What's the one? Something Anna. What's the one?
Inventing Anna.
Inventing Anna is another one. Yeah, everyone's saying that's a really good one. That's on my watch list for sure. There's another series on Netflix that chronicles like multiple like fraud kind of things that we're talking about, and one of them is the racing guy, something Randy Renier or something like that, and he was like a really popular like in the racing circuit, eventually progressed to like Indy 500, and he got his money by selling marijuana. And when I was watching the documentary, they chronicled he was responsible for multiple shipments, but one of his largest shipments was 110,000 pounds of marijuana that had a street value of $50+ million, and that was his thing. And the law at the time was if you were convicted of a drug trafficking crime at the time, it was life in prison. And he was one of the individuals that President Obama pardoned. So he served like 20 something years in prison and then got out. Like, it's an amazing story. I mean, it sort of pseudo kind of ties into like, you know, what we're talking about in crime and all that kind of stuff, but really cool stuff. I don't know how we got on that topic. Now you've got lots of Netflix watching to do, basically, as a result of this interview. As well as prepping yourself for actual interviews for a job, which, Alissa, we thank you for your work in this area. And hope it continues.
Yeah. See, I think I need to go on a mock interview with Alissa because, like,
I think we all do, right? That would be fun.
My mock interviews are called real interviews, and I don't get the job. I mean, not that I've had to go on an interview in the last 8 years because I'm really happy where I am, but it's not a bad idea to go on an interview, mock or otherwise, to keep those sort of skills fresh and how you represent yourself.
I was thinking you'd go on a mock interview to improve your own interviewing skills too.
Sure. Like that's what they
do.
You
never turn down an interview. It's always a good practice to learn how.
Yeah, no, good point, Josh.
Yep. Like exactly listening to Alissa and some of her questions, like I'm going to use some of those things on the next time I interview someone.
But Josh, to your point, I think that's why my mentor in college was like, hey, go on this interview. Like whatever comes of it, you got the experience of being on an interview, right?
You get those jitters.
My best interviews are when I don't care and I just hang out and chill with the interviewer.
Yeah, right.
And those are the ones I get offered jobs. I'm like, no, I'm not really looking. Like, why'd you take the interview? I'm like, I always take interviews. And they're like, no, but we really want you. I'm like, no, I'm not interested. I'm good. Thanks.
I mean, you might be fine some way to make it worth my while. I'm really happy where I am, but the only thing I can do is say no. The worst thing I can do is say no.
Keep talking, Larry.
No, wow, seriously. That's the first time he's ever said that. Usually it's shut up. My God, we got to keep moving.
So Alissa,
Larry, shut up. Put your pants on. No.
We just have 5 questions for you. Are you ready?
You said 5?
Yeah, 5.
I'm ready.
I have exactly 5 questions. Are you ready to play 5 questions with Security Weekly?
All right, let's do it.
All right. 3 words to describe yourself.
Enthusiastic. ×2. There, I did it.
Oh, I love it. Whoa. If you were a serial killer, what would be your weapon of choice?
Oh, what is it called? A garrote? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to write a book about yourself, what would the title be?
Got by, and then ...
What is your favorite hacker movie?
Oh, this is really hard. I think, if I may, Back to the Future. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, nice. Huh.
I know.
Choose 2 celebrities to be your parents.
Alive, dead, fictional, or otherwise.
Aww. I think I like the Obamas. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry to
that is fine.
But,
totally
it brings tears to my eyes.
See, and I clarify that this question is intended to be very open ended, and celebrity is very open ended as
very open. Yeah, like anyone from there's no right or wrong answer.
I mean, like you could pick Bender and my dad. Like, your dad could be a celebrity of mine. Bender's a cartoon character. He's a celebrity. Like, yeah, this is all good.
I like your answers. May I have your answers as well?
Yes. Mine is Robert Downey Jr. and Betty White.
I love Robert Downey Jr. Man, woo! Good times.
But I cheat. Like, I've had time to think about that, right? Like, when we speaking on our guests, like, you only have a certain amount. I've had lots of time to think about that, so it's unfair.
Dude, what a journey. That
Alissa, thank you so much for appearing on Paul Security Weekly. You can come hang out with us anytime. It was so much fun.
Woo! Thank you. Appreciate it. See you, everyone. Fist bump.
With that, coming up next, our good friend Rich Mogul coming up next. Stay tuned.